The air lens lineup that Viltrox has put together in the last, I believe, couple of years, probably even less than a couple of years, has a good chance of becoming legendary thanks to the combination of performance, aperture, and price point. This brand new 15mm f1.7 will definitely contribute to that because it falls in the same bang for your bucks category of all the other air lenses, especially the ones for the APS-C sensor. It's their widest APS-C lens so far, and like the other air lenses, those are not premium lenses. Now you're seeing in my hands the 56 and the 25mm f1.7 that I purchased with my own money because I decided I would record this entire review on the Viltrox 15mm f1.7 on my XE5 for you to see how it does with video. And we'll go back to that later in this video. From a construction standpoint, as I mentioned, this is not a premium lens. It's not made for those who are willing to get the best construction quality possible, but it's made of a polycarbonate that doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like it's going to break on you. Despite being plastic, because polycarbonate is still plastic, it feels pretty solid in the end, and like the other air lenses, it gets you plenty confidence that it's not going to break the day after you buy it. Its design is very minimal as you only get the manual focus ring, which is well dampened, but I don't know how many times you're going to be using this lens in manual focus, but in any case, it's there and you don't get anything else. The lens is not weather sealed and it's relatively compact and lightweight, although compared to the other air lenses in the APS-C lineup, is just a tiny bit bigger and a tiny bit heavier. Nothing to write home about. It's not something that is gonna immediately throw you off. It's just a tiny bit bigger. And the front filter is 58 rather than 52 that I have in the 56 and the 25mm f1.7. They all share the same design. They are basically built the same way. And in many cases, Viltrox is using the same barrel, not in the case of the 15mm f1.7. And they all fall pretty much in the same price point. Now, this specific one, the 15mm f1.7, is a little bit more expensive than the others as it gets sold at $239 or 269 euros, while all the others in the APS-C lineup have been sold lower than $200. But the difference is still minimal, and especially considering how wide it is and the fact that they kept the f1.7 aperture, you can still consider this lens to be basically very, very cheap when it comes to price. Not from the build quality, but when it comes to price, it's very, very affordable. Now, before we get any further into the review, my usual disclaimer. Viltrox, in this case, sent me this lens to review and I get to keep it. I purchased the 56 and the 25 with my own money. But despite the fact that they sent it over for me to review and test it, they don't get to know what I think before you. They don't know what I'm about to say. They have no saying into what I'm about to say in this video. And I was not paid to promote the lens at all. So as usual, if you want to believe the fact that I'm objective trying to review these lenses, I would appreciate it. If you don't, there isn't much that I can do. And now let's talk about the image quality of this lens, because I believe that's why you're here in the first place. Let me start by saying that I only have 40 megapixel cameras when it comes to Fuji, meaning that I have only the X-T50 and the XE5, which is recording me right now. So all my testing was done on the 40 megapixel sensor. I want to start with the sharpness in the center, which is really, really good. Very, very competent lens in the center when it comes to sharpness. In the corners, even wide open, it's not that bad. Of course, it's not as good as the center. You would not expect that, especially at this price point, but no lenses are as good as the center when wide open, regardless of their price point. What you see in the corners is vignetting, it's pretty visible, and as you stop down, that goes away. As you stop down the lens, the sharpness in the center gets a little bit better, but it doesn't change that much because it was already very, very good, already wide open. What changes is a little bit more contrasty, so the perception of sharpness is higher, although the sharpness itself is not that higher. While in the corners, what you get is the corners get a little bit better, but not by a huge margin until you get to f4. And once you get to f5.6, the corners become almost as good as the center. This performance keeps going up until f8. At f11, you see diffraction kicking in, and f16, the diffraction is really, really, really visible. From a flare resistance standpoint, this lens performs really, really well. And this is really important because the wider you get, the more chances you have to get something very bright getting in the frame or just outside the frame. Whether it's the sun or lights at night, there's always something that is risking to ruin your photo if flare is not well controlled. The good thing, this lens controls it pretty nicely. When it comes to chromatic aberration, this lens performed decently well. Of course, wide open, you can see some, especially in the corners. As you stop down, that gets better, but they don't go entirely away. Now, don't be surprised about that. This is to be expected between the price point, the aperture, and the wide angle that you get out of this lens. It's pretty normal to get some chromatic aberration. The good thing is those are not dramatically bad to the point that you cannot use the lens. So you gotta accept a little bit of compromises if you want a lens that stays in this price point despite being this fast, meaning bright, and this wide. Now, since we're talking about being very wide, this lens is a 22.5 millimeters equivalent. That means it's wider than your usual 24. So we're in very wide angle territories. But thanks to the F1.7 aperture, you can blur the background even with a lens this wide, even on APS-C. Now, of course, the bokeh is not going to be dramatic. You're not going to obliterate the background, but it can still play with the depth of field. This lens, like all the other air lenses, doesn't focus particularly close. So yes, you can blur the background. You need to get close to your subject, but you're not going to get right into your subject because it's not going to get in focus that close. However, the good thing is even at its minimum focusing distance, this lens is perfectly usable, even wide open. So yes, it's not a macro lens, but when you get close, as long as you're within the minimum focusing distance, you can definitely get the images that you're looking for. Now, before getting into the autofocus and the video performance of this lens, let me show you a street photography POV that I shoot in Catania, downtown Catania. It's the city that I live in. And then we're going to be back here to keep talking about the lens. Now, I hope you liked that part of the video. I hope you liked the images that I took. let me know in the comments below. And talking about autofocus, the autofocus of this lens is based on the stepper motor, STM motors. So it's not linear motors. It's not the fastest of the autofocus that you can find, but it's pretty silent and it's pretty accurate and decently fast. Now, of course, on Fuji, you're probably not getting the best out of this lens when it comes to the autofocus. I believe on the Sony E-mount, on the A6700, this is probably going to be better, but I don't have much to complain about this lens when it comes to the focus at all. Yes, I missed a couple of shots, not a big deal, probably more the camera's fault than the lens's fault. And yes, this is not going to be the super fastest autofocusing lens that you can find, but for the price point, the aperture, and the overall usability of the lens, this is a pretty competent autofocusing lens. And even in video, you're seeing right now a little bit of vlogging. It does pretty well. It lost me at times when I was doing other stuff. I was recording myself when the video about the Nikon ZF, you can find over here. That was done with this lens, and as it lost me at times. Again, I believe that is probably the camera's fault more than the lens's fault. Now, as we're talking about video, this lens is pretty competent when it comes to video, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely more of a photography lens. But the good thing is, if you're okay with the focus breathing that you're seeing right now on video, and if you're okay with the fact that the focus transition at times are not as smooth as you probably want them, you can definitely use this lens for video. Again, it is important to point out that it's mostly a photographer's tool, but in a pinch, you can definitely use it for video. And given the focal length, you can absolutely use it for vlogging. You're seeing it right now. It does pretty well when it comes to vlogging, although it's not stabilized. You need to rely on the stabilization of your camera. So, in conclusion, this lens completes the trio or the quartet if you also consider the 35mm f1.7 that I haven't tried, and I don't know how good that lens is. I believe it's going to be as good as the others. And with those lenses, you get pretty much the entire coverage that you want at an affordable price point in a small, lightweight, compact setup that it's not going to break the bank. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I was hoping that Viltrox would come up with something a little bit narrower, something along the lines of a 28mm equivalent, so an 18mm, because that is the focal length that I use a lot when it comes to shooting personal stuff, shooting street photography, and all of that. This one being 22.5 equivalent, it's definitely wider. And if you're talking about street photography, you absolutely need to get into people's face a lot more than you would do with a 28mm equivalent. That being said, however, in any other use case scenario, a lens like this is incredibly good. It's a perfect travel lens. It's perfect for family gathering, parties, stuff like that. Being this wide allows you to get a lot of stuff in the frame. And let's just say you're traveling, you use in a city, you just want to get the church or whatever it is, grand vista that you have. With a lens this wide, you can absolutely get whatever it is that it is in the frame. Now, especially with the 40 megapixel cameras, you can also take advantage of cropping in the XE5 with its lever, make it a little bit easier on that, and go from a 15 to a basically a third, from a 22.5 equivalent to basically a 31, 32 millimeters equivalent if you need something a little bit narrower without losing that many megapixels. That is an added value of having a high megapixel count sensor. And so this lens is pretty versatile. It is really good from an optical standpoint. It is very good when it comes to autofocus, and it's very good for covering your day-to-day stuff. Based on my experience, I believe this Viltrox Air lenses, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is gonna take over the market because no one else is doing what Viltrox is doing with the amount of lenses that they're doing with and the quality of the lenses that they're putting together. So I'm pretty happy with what Viltrox is doing, and Viltrox is also doing pretty good things when it comes to the Pro series and the Lab series. And in general, you can trust Viltrox to be delivering very good image quality regardless of the focal length that they come up with. I hope you liked the video. I hope you liked the pictures that I showed you in the video, and let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I missed. Ciao, grazie, and I'll see you in the next one.